that mean that Todd is an twerp?
Yes.
Wow.
And he's listening. He's
I
listening
know.
online, and we can see him in
I
the
had to
chat.
do that for him. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, Caleb, please, no. No. You can't leave because there's no PowerShell. That's just giving him too much power. All right, my friends, it is that time, May 13th, 2026. We're going to be doing sharing with OneDrive Hero links. Thanks for joining us today. Most of the gang's all here. We have Todd away. He is over in Antwerp showing some people some stuff about AI.
Does that
Sharing.
mean Todd? Does that mean that Todd is an twerp?
Yes.
Wow.
And he's listening. He's
I
listening
know.
online, and we can see him in
I
the
had
chat.
to do that for him. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, Caleb, please, no. No. You can't leave because there's no PowerShell. That's just giving him too much power. All right. Sharing with OneDrive Hero links in Microsoft's own words. So that's going to be sort of what they are presenting on this change. What do we mean by sharing? How sharing used to be. So a little of the Wayback Machine. What is a hero link? And some of the benefits and governance we're going to cover today. And I think it's going to be mostly the Mark and Mark show, but we'll definitely have some chime-ins from the group. So starting off, Mark Cashman, get us going.
So in Microsoft's own words, and you could have probably taken a version of this slide within each generation of the sharing update, and that's not meant to ding Microsoft. It is they've been striving. Okay. Well, they have been working for quite some time on making sharing easier, more intuitive, and of course, more powerful, all in the context of keeping your information more secure. So I think the middle part, if you get into the context of this is their third rev. So think in terms of what Mark is going to talk about, what sharing used to be, and then it's just getting more simple and changing the UI. But this one's a big rev beyond just the UI. So I think this is the first time where it really lands on that middle section where it is simpler, smarter, and secure. Maybe we'll pick apart and not necessarily land on it all being cozy and comfortable, but they really do mean when you use a URL, it is the same consistent thing that you put out into the world, and it does become easier to manage. There's, in fact, less to manage. But in their own words, if you want to read it and both track it, we have a roadmap ID. This is not yet fully rolled out, if even started rolled out. You might have seen this if in some early looks and ganders. They've been talking about it for a while, so it might be a surprise that it is not yet out. But just to be clear, if you go and try this today, you won't see the hero link experience, but the what's to come should be a lot more easy to use and certainly more functional. We first wanted to get into sort of the grounding terminology taxonomy, if Mark would say it that way. Both me and Mark, I'm going to say. But on the next slide is really just a breakdown of terminology. When we talk about sharing, it's really important, even though things are getting more simple and easier to manage. You are sharing a file and you are affecting effectively the permissions of where that file is stored, the file itself, the folder, or in the case of SharePoint from the site perspective. So you're granting access and you're giving somebody the capabilities to do something with that file, if not a lot of people to do a lot of different things with that file. So from a sharing perspective, it leads into permissions. You're granting people the ability to either view or edit, and that is something that you can do both with the same URL, which is nice. There is a setting at the tenant level, so that's kind of the ruling factor. From the top down, you can do X or Y, but from everywhere down below, maybe you can't go above a threshold of how you share. So if you set things at the tenant, you can also individually set things at the site level or individually for people's OneDrives, but you can't override the tenant level settings. So just know that there's also a level at which, when you do settings from an IT perspective, they will be adhered to. You can't break them by changing or doing some magnificent hero link that you think is going to override the tenant level setting. So from top down, you should know some of the terminology and how the hero link plays into the basically management and control of file access. But But to be clear, when you create a sharing link, a hero link, it does create a new permission on that file or in that folder or for that site. And that's important because even though they're more easy, simpler, and more secure, they are a new thing that you're adding to basically define who has access or can get to this file. And if you do that properly, great. If you don't, especially in the old ways and the old habits, it is troublesome and it is more to manage that we're trying to keep you away from in our guidance. And with this new feature, it's also trying to keep you away from collecting too much dust and too many links. But I think with that, let's go back into the Wayback Machine with Mr. Mark Anderson to talk about how sharing was and maybe then convert into what it is now.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that you're talking about it does break sharing, but I believe, and so since we haven't actually been able to experience it yet because it's not out, but my understanding is the new hero links default setting would be share with existing users, which would not poke the hole in the permissions settings that you have on that thing until you said specifically to pick somebody that to specifically say you want to give this to somebody who doesn't already have permissions, or you want to change the permissions in some way. By default, we're going to get the just an actual link, which is not how it always was. And so on that note, I guess throwing it over to Mark Anderson for old school sharing.
So the interesting thing here is we're saying how sharing used to be, meaning how it is now.
It's now, yeah,
Because,
exactly.
the hero link stuff is not rolled out yet to most tenants. There may be some people out there who have the new bits, but it's not out there yet. It's supposed to be rolling out at this moment, right? So
Yep.
if you start getting a lot of calls on your help desk, sharing works differently. That's why you've got the new settings, so you want to be aware of this. So this is the way it has been working. Depending on what your tenant settings are, what sharing dialog you get when you click the share button varies, and that's because you can as a tenant admin set a default sharing mode either at the tenant or site level, as Mark was talking about. So, is it a confusing UI? Yes, permissions are confusing, and I always explain it to people as they're confusing because they're very powerful. You have a lot of different options, so you've got a lot of different buttons you can push. I'm not sure that the new hero link is going to solve the confusing thing, but I think it might make it simpler. So the biggest difference here is that each time you do a share today or yesterday, you get a different link. And if you look at the actual text of the link, it's got a big long, it's not a GUID, it's a big long secret string thing.
Encrypted string, I think is what it is.
Yep. And that varies it's a different one of those for each link that you create. So you end up with a lot of these different links, and each one can have different secret squirrel string. Exactly, Caleb. And so you end up with potentially many links to the same object, whether it's a folder, a file, a site, whatever. So each person who has different permissions gets a different link, and they don't know that. You don't necessarily know that, but it, like Mark said, it sort of builds up a lot of dust and lint. Because there's so many sharing links, and if you looked at manage access for the current object, you may see dozens of links because it's a site where people have shared a lot. The other part of this is the link settings. Those 4 options have been there for a very long time. Anyone with the link, if that's the default in your tenant, you might want to rethink that. People in the tenant, people in the organization with the link, that is often the default. And that means that if somebody gets that link and they redeem it, then they have access to that thing. It doesn't mean that everybody automatically gets access to the tenant. People with existing access is sort of our favorite because it doesn't break any permission inheritance. It's just saying, hey, here's that file that I was talking about, or here's this folder that I was talking about. You already have permission, but it's more like giving somebody a pointer to the thing that you're talking about. And then specific people is what you see typically at the top or that top dialog. And then you have options down below, depending on which one of these options you get. So confusing, yes. Complicated, yes. Powerful, absolutely. So what is that changing to? Mark, are you going to tell me, or shall I tell you?
You should tell him.
I think Mark with a C should be the hero for this linkage to information.
Yes. All right. So like I said, I alluded to, instead of getting, potentially dozens of links for the same object, you get one link. It's also the same link that sits up in the URL. So if you just copy the URL and send it to somebody, it's no different than clicking the sharing button and changing settings and sending that link. There is one link for every object. That is really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's a huge improvement.
What it does, what it effectively does, is it takes the parameters by which you set the link out of the link itself and puts it in sort of a black box on the back end. So everybody can have the same link, but that doesn't mean they have the same permissions. However you've set it up in that dialog, the person has the permissions that you've set up, but the link is the same. So I could get a link that says I can edit everything. I could hand that link to Julie, and Julie could try it, and she's not going to get anywhere because she's not me. Okay. At the same time, if we give her read permission, she gets the same link. Both of us have the access we need, but the link is the same. So Julie can ask me, hey, where's that thing? And I can just hand her the link and not worry about whether or not the permissions are set for her because somebody else did it.
Yeah.
So it simplifies things, I think, from the end user perspective. I'm not sure that it changes the sort of overhead of thinking about how to share things, but it does give you a different dialogue, which unfortunately on this screen is a little blurry. That shows you how you can understand who has permissions and what kind of permissions they have. And you can see here, it's one listing. You don't have to go into each link and see how is this link set up. There's one link, and then you can see each person and what permissions they have. So they might have can view, can edit, full control, and that's easy to see. And then I've noticed the improved access denied experience below because of testing some external sharing with one of our clients. And yes, it's prettier, but it's still just as frustrating when you get it and you don't want it. So you'll all get used to that. It's sort of like the bicycle with the flat tire that we were getting when we have errors in the list. We love that for about 10 minutes because it was cute. And then when you get it now, you just think, oh, damn, it's not working again. Same thing with this access denied experience. There's a little bit more information on that screen. Also, you can't see it as well, but it says which account you are trying to access with, which can really help if you happen to have access to more than one account. That will tell you which account is the problem, so that you might be able to work it out yourself. And I think that's enough of me. Why don't you take over, Mark?
Bunch of questions, and I don't know that we have the answer to many of them, but there's a lot of questions, so we should probably try to hit those, unless we think we're going to answer them, and I don't think we are. So first question from Hilde. So it's always the file path which is given within the more details of the file. I assume
Not sure
so.
I understand that question.
Well, you can when you go ahead, Mark.
I just think part of the answer is what you see on the bottom bullet of the slide currently, the URL path, which you would see when you're opening up the file or you're looking at it, which folder is it in. It is more of the direct URL to where is the file versus an obfuscated, weird lettered and numbered URL, because I don't think we've seen a lot of them. It's hard to know what extra stuff they might put on.
It still is obfuscated though, because you certainly wouldn't want to have the link look like, /documents/ we're firing everybody .xls. It isn't the full path. It's a generic sort of, if you've used services like Bitly or Owly or something like that with a shortened link, think of it more like that.
Yes, Todd, you're fired.
Caleb asked a question, which I do know the answer. How do we clean up all the old nasty links once this rolls out? One of the reasons it's been delayed over time, they wanted to release this last fall, is that conversion is going to be done for you. Everything will be, all of the existing links will be turned into single hero links with the permissions and everything fixed. We'll watch that happen, right? I mean, there is a finite number of combinations. So,
to Dan's question, then, has anyone heard if this will work similarly using the document ID URL? So changes to file names or location will break the link. I would say that's probably not the case, given what we're thinking. Like the encoded URL, it's probably its current location, but I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know that we do yet.
That document ID feature. Does it do anything in modern? I'm not even sure if it does.
I don't know. We sort of answered Francis's question. Are they removing the everyone in the org can view edit option, or will there be only one of those options that is the document itself needs to be set to that in a separate way?
There won't be a separate way. Well, there's setting permissions, and then there's creating links, right?
Right.
And there is sort of not a deprecation, but a discouragement of using everyone except external users, though I'm not sure that's the question. The permissions are set. You're setting the permissions on the site or the folder or the object, and then you're sharing links which sort of pile on top of that. In this case, there will be one link piling on top of that with granting different permissions to different people other than the inherited permissions that it already has. If that's the question.
Dan also then chimed in the doc ID. He uses it, and you can access it from Modern in the details pane. And he says it's come in handy for transient files. So yeah, that's a cool idea.
Well, of course they're going to handle that then, Dan. Be interested to hear from you if you get this functionality. I'd be interested in hearing how it went for that. That'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to hedge a bet that they have some mitigation or something that's built in as they do the move to or copy to type experiences. And if you change the file name, that can't break the hero link, or it wouldn't be so horrific.
I have to
get those confirmed.
Yeah, I have to bet actually it probably does, because I suspect it's going to use the document ID for a file anyway as the thing that it encodes for the URL as its location. So yeah, we could confirm, but that feels like it might work. So all right, Mark Cashman, what are some of the benefits of hero links?
We've been hinting at them, but we just wanted to land on one slide that talked about the why would you do this outside of you have no choice, it's coming. But it is easier to manage all of the adjustments that you make to who you want to have access a file or a folder. You do all of that without having to resend the URL. So the URL stays the same, but you manage it at the source, which is really nice, especially when we talk about the oversharing aspects of, I forgot that I shared that with so-and-so in a certain way. You'll be able to both manage that and hopefully only have that one file that you send out, that you don't have to resend another link or a different link to somebody else. They have the link, and if they don't have access, you can adjust it locally. You don't have to send them a new link or adjust a communication that you've already crafted and published out there. Part of that is why it improves security. It's still just that one link. It's not an accidental link that you sent to somebody who shouldn't have edit capabilities, but you sent them the edit link. Better compliance, because obviously you're managing that more close to home and you have fewer things to manage and less overtime to either forget about or just have still laying around. The new sharing UI, even though Mark was hinting that it's still confusing, it's just because it's a lot of choice that you can have, whether you set an expiration date or adjust somebody from view to edit, or make sure that somebody, has X or Y type access. The nicest thing, again, based on some of the guidance that you've heard from the team, is if you set things right at the permissions of the site level, that unit of work that we talked about a while ago, then you've already set permissions and you're really just sharing a link to the site. So do the copy link. That's the easiest thing, because then you're already sharing it with people that you've already kind of set permissions for. But of course, you can assign people specific permissions within the link itself. The access denied is mostly just that it's prettier. It doesn't feel like a dead end. It feels like a sharp left or something like that. And there is a feature that we haven't talked about. It's kind of in the act of sharing, adding context of what it is that you're sharing. If the name isn't clear or the location isn't quite visible, in the sharing dialog, you can have Copilot, if you have Copilot, generate a summary and have that included, that then is a part of the sharing email that people get. So-and-so shared an email with you. Here's a little summary about the file. And then you can decide as an end user, do I want to commit to opening it or doing something that somebody asked me to do with the file? So it's a nice little feature, and I think it's a nice embedded use of Copilot. If you're starting to look at adopting Copilot or using it more, it's kind of a little helper for clarification. There is a lot of governance when it comes to hopefully these benefits. I was going to share a story here that is just a kind of the first one. It was my limitation of knowing a tool, even though I had just been shown exactly how to use it. But this is using the ShareGate migration tool. I was going from a site to a site, and I forgot to uncheck inherit permissions as part of the migration. And instead of starting with a nice blank sheet of paper with then me leaning in and adding the right permissions, it carried over all of the sharing links. And I beat myself against the wall, and I said, Mark told me not to check that box. And of course I did. This is true. And then I went into, I think, Dan's question earlier, and cleaned up all of the sharing links, which wasn't very fun because it's old, crufty SharePoint.
Yeah.
But part of the governance aspect is that minimizing link sprawl. There's lots of sprawl in Microsoft 365, and links are probably the hardest thing to keep track of. Not only to know what the link did, who you shared it with, who it affects, but just the fact that there's multiple links in the past makes it a lot easier to just kind of alter things at the source versus having all of these things that exist on the site or within your OneDrive, which is even harder to get at those links. We think it improves security because it does kind of adhere better to the intent of the tenant, the site, and everything down below. And what you heard Mark walk through in terms of that anyone link just is something that when you copy paste the URL, you're just copy pasting the URL, not necessarily the wrong URL. There are more admin controls at the tenant level down to the site level, especially when you start thinking about managing across different people's OneDrives. The visibility of when you invite somebody who is a guest, I think this has been there for a while, but they did update the UI a little bit to indicate that somebody who you've shared with is a guest, or somebody else who sees, and they click on the manage access, they'll be able to see that there are guests that are being shared with. The fact that there's no new links necessary, I think we've hit on this a couple times, but just to iterate, if I put in a big communication or an email or a Teams chat or a whatever, and I have a nice hyperlink, read the document or submit your questions based on this information, I don't ever have to change that communication, especially ones that are harder to retract. I just update the backend details on the file. Everything is now a little bit more consolidated to get from the share dialog to the manage access dialog. Currently, right now, it's 2 entry points when you go and right click or do the 3 ellipses on a file. Now it's just all this part of the same dialog package. You still have to figure out how to maneuver and get to it, but it's a little bit more unified, and that makes it a little bit easier. And then the final one here, I'm just reading why did I add it. Users can further secure their content by controlling. Yeah, I think that's just probably a repeat of what we've been saying. So apologies for that additional governance reflection. But then the net of it should be, and I think it'd be great to just open it up to the rest of the team with any thoughts or things that they're excited about, especially if they're doing a lot of that user adoption or governance, kind of putting things in place properly. does this make it more simple, more secure, easier to use? I don't know, Patrick or Carrie, any thoughts or reiteration, or Derek? I think, when you look at this coming, this is one of those things that we are actually cheering, I think, to have be put in place.
Yeah.
Would love to hear any thoughts.
I think this is going to make it really simple for folks to see who has access to the document and what level of access they have. Like just putting it all on one screen where you can see that Julie has edit access and Carrie has download access, or whatever it happens to be. Just putting it on one simple screen just is gonna make things a lot simpler from a governance perspective, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I still think you're going to have new people coming to it and being confused. Like, I think Mark is dead right. Mark Anderson is dead right on the fact that it is still a bit confusing, the UI. But for those more, SharePoint savvy users, they're going to probably feel a little relieved that this is going to make their lives easier as far as like managing those permissions and not feeling like, well, I don't even know where to go look as to whether who has access to this or not. So I think for more mature organizations with more mature users, they're going to be doing a better job of not creating kind of a Swiss cheese of permissions in their site. One of the things I wonder, because again, I've only seen it and I've not actually used it. One of the things I wonder is if they will allow you to accidentally, I'm going to say it that way, add a user that already has permissions to a file again. Do you know what I mean? So like you can go in and say, oh, I want, like if Mark doesn't have access to a site and I want to share a file with him, and I go in and I say, oh, I want to add Mark, then it'll say Mark Anderson and he'll have edit rights or whatever. Well, what if Carrie has access to the site with me and I go in and go, well, I want to share this with Carrie, like not knowing that Carrie already has access to the site. I just kind of wonder what will happen with that. So once it comes out, it'll be something to see how that dialogue sort of reacts to that. I hope that it will be like, Carrie already has access to this. It's inherited from, whatever. I hope that it does that, but I haven't seen it.
I think it does, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
I think I had one big caveat I would say about this is you still need to teach people in your organization about permissions and sharing. Mm-hmm. Most organizations do not do this. They just say, oh, we use SharePoint, put your stuff in there. Yeah. I think this will make things simpler, but it doesn't make it simpler if you don't understand any of it to start with. So think about how you can use this as a good training moment or something, if you want to think of it that way, to teach people in your organization a bit more than they know. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I saw one scenario a couple weeks ago where the site had been shared owners, members, and this person was a member of the site, part of the group. But the link that somebody had shared with them was a view-only link, and they were getting a little frustrated because they were getting a view-only experience even though they were a member of the site. And then we troubleshooted a little bit to figure out the fact that they couldn't then go into an edit mode. They couldn't see the edit choices in the file. So it was a little weird that, kind of to Julie's question, if somebody was a member of the site, aka they should be able to edit the file, but you share with them distinctly a file within that same container, but with a unique permission behind it, edit or view or a difference. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are able to be added, and that there still is that ability to kind of send somebody something that they can do, but then they can't do based on the sharing link. Yeah, no. I just think it's a little weird. But if you do the copy link, that's what I love about this feature. If you just choose copy link and you don't assume any permissions are to be added or changed, then it'll just work in how you've configured things. It doesn't change anything. The behavior doesn't change by using the copy link feature.
I was just going to add one thing. I would hope that this would help for IT or people auditing this stuff, right? They're not going to have that other layer of all these other links to try to figure out and decipher who actually has access. So I think that should be super helpful. And also maybe reduce some of like, let me just download this in email because you have a little more maybe confidence in what you're sending over. I'm just curious about the sensitivity label stuff. Like can you still will it reduce you bypassing any of those policies by having this extra link? And hopefully that's not a thing. You know what I mean? Like hopefully that will
Yeah.
improve some of that stuff. But it does feel weird that there was all those options to create several of these links all to the same thing that were all different. So hopefully this will be better. Yeah.
100% improvement. All right. These are our resources, everyone, from today's presentation. So if you need those, you can link there, and they'll also be on our website when we post this episode to our Ask Sympraxis area. And last but not least, May 27th, join us for the wonderful, beautiful, amazing Joanne Klein, who's going to join us for a Purview preview. So let's see. Todd is at Techorama right now, but also in our chat. So ping him and say hi. Hope you're having fun in Antwerp. TechCon 365 Chicago is coming up, and a lot of us will be over there. Myself, Mark, Derek, Mark, Patrick, all in Chicago, and that's mid-June. We have a discount code of $200 off if you would like to join us there, so you can use our code. We have TechCon 365 Seattle coming after that in late August. Myself, Derek, Patrick, and Mark will be there. Another discount code for $200 if you want to join us there. And then finally, we've added it to the slide, Collab Days New England. We're all going to be there. We're super happy about it. It's
But how
an
much
event
does
that
it
we love to-
cost, Julie?
It is free. It is free, everyone.
Oh my
So that's
goodness.
Friday, October 16th. It's in Burlington, Mass. It's a free event where it's going to be a huge event this year because we're going to increase the amount of people that can attend. So that's really good. The call for speakers closes in 3 days on May 16th. So if you are hearing this and you are a speaker and you want to join us, put in your sessions today. Go to collabdaysne.org and you can get to some links that way. And yeah.
And if you want to sponsor,
and
you
if
can
you
talk
want
to
to-
me.
Is
Yep.
the call for sponsorship also closing on the 16th, Derek?
No.
Oh, we never close the call for sponsorship.
Yeah. And we could
I
use
will
some.
gladly
So
accept money
We're
from
still looking
anyone that
for-
wants to give it.
We're still looking for sponsors for 2018, aren't we?
Oh, no. In all seriousness, though, if your organization would like to sponsor it, it's going to be a huge event this year. Reach out to info@collabdaysne.org, and we will get you some more information. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.